Across the table, he watched me with that same unreadable patience that had first drawn me to him. He didn't smile. He never needed to. I tried to breathe through the silence. The hum of quiet conversation from other tables barely reached us. The entire restaurant seemed to curve away, giving him room, the kind of respect you can't buy, only command. My mother's fingers trembled as she reached for her water. The sound of ice shifting in the glass felt louder than it should have been. "You've done well," she said softly, her voice steadier than her hands. He nodded once, his attention never leaving me. "She has your composure," he said. Something about that sentence made my throat close. His tone was smooth, almost kind, but there was a weight beneath it, as if every word he spoke carried the memory of something that couldn't be said aloud. Mother smiled, a small, brittle thing that didn't reach her eyes. "She doesn't," she said, and sipped her water as though that would wash away the tension. The air between them tightened. I could feel it, like invisible wires pulling across the table. He leaned back slightly, the movement controlled, deliberate. "You taught her restraint," he said. "That's rare." I wanted to speak, to ask why everything sounded like accusation disguised as praise. Instead, I traced the rim of my glass with my fingertip. The gesture steadied me. When he finally looked at me, it wasn't like a man observing. It was like being measured, understood, and quietly claimed. There was no cruelty in his gaze, but there was no safety either. I'd met him months ago, at a charity gala my mother insisted I attend. He'd stood apart from the crowd, dressed in black when everyone else glittered in color. People moved around him like currents around a stone, aware, reverent, afraid. I hadn't known who he was then, only that something about his stillness had drawn me closer. And now, sitting here under this chandelier, I wished I had never stepped into his line of sight. "Are you nervous?" he asked. The question was too direct. His voice low, steady, yet unyielding. "I'm not," I said, though my pulse betrayed me. His lips curved just enough to suggest he knew the truth. Mother placed her hand on mine. The warmth of it startled me. It felt almost protective, but also pleading, as though she was trying to stop a disaster she had already set in motion. "Some things are better left unsaid," she murmured. He turned his gaze to her, and for the first time that evening, his composure cracked, not visibly, but in the air itself. The silence grew heavier, like a warning. "What things?" I asked before she could stop me. Mother's fingers tightened over mine. "It doesn't matter," she whispered. But it did. It mattered too much. Because the way he looked at her, the stillness that followed her words, told me everything I didn't want to believe. The waiter approached, breaking the spell for a moment. He set down plates we would barely touch, murmuring polite phrases before retreating. I stared at the food without seeing it. When the waiter left, my mother leaned forward. "You said you wanted to talk about business," she said to him, her tone clipped, brittle. "Not." "I changed my mind," he interrupted, softly. "It's personal now." I froze. Mother's eyes flickered, the first crack in her practiced calm. "You don't get to decide that." His gaze didn't waver. "I already did." Something cold coiled through me, not fear, not exactly. Something deeper. Recognition. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It pulsed with everything unsaid, shared history, buried emotion, old betrayal. I didn't know the story, but I could feel its shape pressing against the walls of this dinner, threatening to break them. "Stop," Mother whispered. "Not here." His expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Still trying to control the room," he said. "You haven't changed." Her lips parted, as if to answer, but no words came out. I turned to her, really looked at her, and for the first time saw a kind of fear that didn't belong to the present. It was older, rooted. The kind of fear that comes from remembering. My chest tightened. "You know him," I said quietly. Neither of them spoke. The chandelier's light fractured across the wineglass again, scattering small reflections on the tablecloth. My reflection shimmered between theirs, younger, unknowing, standing at the edge of something irreversible. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, deliberate. "Your mother and I share a past. One that ended before you were born." My stomach dropped. The air felt thin, useless. Mother's hand slipped from mine. She stared down at the table, her expression composed, but her silence screamed confession. I looked between them, the man who'd filled my dreams with equal parts fear and longing, and the woman who'd raised me to stay away from men like him. The connection between them was undeniable now, not imagined, not accidental. And just like that, every piece of my life shifted. The man I had trusted with my heart had already taken something from my family long before me. When I finally found my voice, it came out softer than I intended. "What did you take from her?" His eyes found mine again, and I saw a flicker of something. Regret, maybe. "Everything," he said. The room blurred. The chandelier above swayed ever so slightly, light scattering like shattered glass. I wanted to stand, to leave, to breathe, but the weight of what had just surfaced pressed me still. Across from me, my mother's hand covered her mouth, as if to keep a secret that had already escaped. The sound of a glass breaking somewhere behind us jolted the air. Someone else's dinner, someone else's accident, but to me it felt like an omen. I didn't know then that the real break had just happened here, in this room, between the three of us. And as his gaze lingered, calm and unshaken, I realized the truth. This dinner wasn't a meeting. It was a reckoning. I used to believe danger announced itself, the sound of tires screeching, the echo of shouting, something loud enough to warn you before it struck. But when I met him, danger arrived in silence. It was raining that night. I remember because the city lights were blurred behind the wet windshield, and my heels made that hollow tapping sound against the marble floor of the hotel lobby. My mother had sent me to deliver a donation envelope to a charity she sponsored. "Just a quick errand," she said, "and don't talk to anyone." I never was good at following instructions. He was standing near the elevator, dressed in black, the kind of black that swallows light. He wasn't supposed to be there. I knew that by the way people avoided him, how the hotel staff looked past him as if acknowledging him might be dangerous. And yet, he looked at me. That first look wasn't soft, wasn't kind, but it was steady, an unspoken challenge. I don't remember what I said to him. I only remember the feeling, that flicker of awareness that something irreversible had begun. Now, sitting alone in my apartment weeks after the dinner, that memory loops like a film I can't stop watching. He had entered my life the way storms enter, uninvited, beautiful, and ruinous. After the dinner, I tried to stay away. I ignored his calls. I avoided the places I knew he frequented. But it was like trying to unhear a melody once it's already lodged beneath your skin. He found me again, not through chance. Nothing about him was chance. It was late when I opened the door that night. He didn't ask to come in. He simply stepped inside, his presence filling the room the way darkness fills a space when the lights go out. "You shouldn't be here," I said, voice trembling. He looked around, his gaze sweeping over the books stacked on the counter, the candles still burning on the table. "You keep things too close to fire," he murmured. "You'll burn if you're not careful." Maybe I already have. He turned toward me then, and for a heartbeat, there was no threat, only silence charged with everything we weren't saying. "You think I hurt your mother," he said. "You're right. But not in the way you imagine." I wanted to ask what that meant, but the way he looked at me, half apology, half possession, made words useless. He stepped closer. Every movement was precise, calculated. He didn't need to touch me, his proximity alone felt like an invasion. And yet, my pulse betrayed me, quick, uneven. "Why me?" I asked quietly. "Why now?" His expression didn't change. Because you remind me of everything I try to forget. The air between us thickened. I took a step back, but there was nowhere to go. The room felt smaller, the candlelight unsteady. I hated that my voice softened. Then forget me. He smiled faintly, but it wasn't amusement. It was surrender. Some things can't be undone. He left without another word, the sound of the door closing sharper than any argument could have been. That night, I dreamed of him standing at the edge of my bed, not threatening, not tender, just watching. When I woke, my heart was racing, my palms damp. The candle had burned itself out. Days passed. I tried to focus on work, on normality. But his shadow followed me everywhere. Every car that slowed near the curb, every unfamiliar number on my phone. I wondered if it was him. And then the world shifted again. The doctor's voice was calm, professional, but the words felt distant, almost unreal. "You're pregnant," she said. The sentence floated between us like smoke. I nodded, too stunned to speak. My fingers tightened around the edge of the examination table. I wasn't ready for joy or fear, only disbelief. When I left the clinic, the city looked the same, traffic, noise, lights, but everything inside me had changed. I didn't tell my mother. I couldn't. She'd look at me and see her own mistakes reflected back. That night, I sat on the floor beside the bed, holding the test result like a confession. He called once, his name flashing on my phone screen like a warning. I didn't answer. But he kept calling. When I finally picked up, his voice was low, measured. "You've been quiet." I needed space. He was silent for a moment, then said, "Space doesn't erase truth." "What truth?" I asked. "That you're still mine." The words shouldn't have made me shiver, but they did. Not because I believed him, but because part of me wanted to. I ended the call, but the echo of his voice lingered. 2 days later, a black car waited across from my apartment. No one inside moved, but I knew it was his way of saying, "I'm still here." I told myself it was protection. I told myself it wasn't surveillance. Lies we tell ourselves sound softer at night. When I visited my mother the following weekend, she noticed before I said anything. She always did. "You look pale," she said, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. "Is he still around?" I hesitated, then nodded. Her face tightened. "You need to end it." "It's not that simple." "It never is. That's how he keeps people, by making them believe there's no way out." There was something in her voice, bitterness sharpened by memory. She turned away quickly, as if afraid I'd see too much. I wanted to ask what he'd taken from her, what history they shared, but the words caught in my throat. That night, as I walked home through the drizzle, my phone buzzed again. A message. Just 3 words, "We need to talk." I didn't reply. But deep down, I knew I would. Because love, or whatever we were, doesn't leave room for clean exits. It stains everything it touches. And I could already feel the mark forming. I didn't mean to let her see the phone light up. The text was short, a name, a time, nothing else. But the look on my mother's face when she caught it was enough to freeze the air between us. She didn't ask who it was. She didn't have to. "Where?" she said quietly. I turned the phone over in my hand, as if hiding the screen could undo what she already knew. "It's just a meeting. With him." Her voice didn't rise, but it carried the kind of certainty that comes from memory, not suspicion. I felt the sharp pull of shame and defiance twist together inside me. "I can take care of myself." She stepped closer, her eyes searching my face. "That's exactly what I used to tell myself." I laughed, too sharply. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" For a moment, neither of us moved. The kitchen clock ticked between us like an accusation. My mother had always been a woman of restraint, measured words, careful choices. But now, her calm felt like the surface of something volatile. "He destroyed lives," she said. The words hit harder than a shout. "He saved mine," I whispered. "You don't know him." She looked at me the way a person looks at a reflection that no longer resembles them, recognition tangled with grief. "You sound like I used to." I wanted to ask what that meant, but she turned away, busying herself with dishes that didn't need washing. The sound of running water filled the silence, but I could still hear the tremor in her breath. When she spoke again, her tone was quieter, steadier. "He makes you believe you're different. That you see the side of him no one else does. It feels like power. It's not. It's dependence." The words lodged in me like splinters. She was wrong, I told myself. He wasn't what she said. But deep down, part of me already feared she was right. I met him that evening anyway. The restaurant was smaller this time, darker, private. He was already there when I arrived, sitting with his back to the wall, a habit of control he never abandoned. When his eyes lifted to meet mine, something in my chest betrayed me, that familiar mix of safety and danger that made every step toward him feel like falling. "You came," he said simply. "I shouldn't have. Yet you did." The waiter appeared, ghost-like, and poured wine neither of us would drink. The tablecloth was the color of smoke, the air smelled faintly of rain and leather. He studied me in silence. "She told you something." I didn't answer. "Your mother." His voice softened, almost affectionate. "She always had a way of poisoning truth until it sounded like protection." The sentence landed with precision, gentle, deliberate, cruel. "You talk like you knew her well," I said. He smiled slightly, not denying it. "We had an understanding once." The word understanding felt too calm for whatever passed between them. "What did she do to you?" I asked. He leaned back, gaze drifting toward the window, where the city lights smeared against the glass. "She chose survival over loyalty. I don't blame her for that." "Loyalty to who?" His eyes returned to mine. "To me." I didn't know whether to believe him. The truth hung between us like smoke, visible, shifting, impossible to grasp. "I'm not her," I said. He looked at me for a long time, expression unreadable. "No," he said finally. "You're not." But the way he said it, quiet, almost reverent, felt like a verdict, not a compliment. When I got home, the apartment felt too small. My mother was waiting in the living room, her coat still on, as if she'd been pacing the whole time I was gone. "You saw him," she said. I didn't answer. "What did he tell you?" "That you betrayed him." Her hands clenched. "Is that what he calls it?" "What do you call it?" She looked at me then, really looked. "Escape." I wanted to believe her, but my heart was still echoing with his voice, that quiet control that always sounded like truth. "You think I don't see it," she said. "The way you talk about him, the way you look when his name comes up. You're already caught, and you don't even know the cage is closing." "Stop trying to make your past mine," I snapped. She flinched, as if the words had struck. "You think I'm doing this to control you. I'm trying to save you." "Then tell me the truth." Her silence stretched, heavy and unbearable. When she finally spoke, her voice was so faint I almost missed it. "If I tell you, you'll hate me." I shook my head. "I already might." Her breath shuddered out of her. "Then you deserve to know what kind of man he really is." She didn't finish the sentence. The sound of a car outside broke through the moment. Low engine idle, headlights sweeping across the window before fading. She went still, her face paling. "Go to your room," she said quickly. "Why?" "Just do it." Her tone left no room for argument. I stepped into the hallway, heart pounding. Through the narrow crack of the doorway, I saw her move to the front door and open it. He was there. His voice was calm, too calm. "You should have called me back. I told you there's nothing left to say." There's always something left. Even from the hallway, I could feel the tension coil between them. Not anger, something older. Regret shaped like resentment. He stepped inside without being invited. My mother didn't stop him. When she spoke, her voice trembled for the first time. "Leave her out of this." "I didn't bring her into it," he said softly. "You did." The words cut through the space like glass breaking. I pressed a hand to my mouth to keep from gasping. My pulse was loud enough to drown everything else. He took a slow step closer to her. "You could have told her the truth years ago. She deserves better than this. She deserves the truth." I didn't realize I'd moved until the floor creaked under my foot. His head turned toward me, not sharply, just a flicker of awareness, as if he'd known I was there all along. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then he said, "Come out." I stepped into the light. My mother's face drained of color. He looked between us, two versions of the same fear, one older, one newer, and his voice was almost tender when he said, "Now you both know what it feels like to hide from something you can't undo." Later that night, after he left, the house felt different, emptied of air, full of echoes. My mother sat on the edge of the couch, eyes fixed on nothing. I wanted to reach for her, but I couldn't move. "What did you mean," I finally whispered, "when you said he destroyed lives?" She didn't answer. She just whispered, "I thought running from him would keep you safe." From what? From being me. I didn't understand then, but the look in her eyes told me I would. Soon. And as the night deepened, I realized something terrifying. Whatever my mother had done, I was already following her footsteps, down the same road toward the same man. It started with the silence on his end of the phone. That was how I knew something had changed. No more late calls that came like thunder in the dark, no more measured words that steadied and terrified me at once. Just silence. The kind of silence that means control is slipping. At first, I told myself it didn't matter, that the distance was good, healthy even. But every quiet night felt like waiting for an explosion you couldn't see. I began noticing small things. The car that always idled too long at the corner near my building. The way my name stopped opening doors in places where it once did. And when I did hear from him again, his voice was different, thinner at the edges, strained. "Are you safe?" he asked. It should have been a comforting question. Instead, it sounded like a warning. "What's happening?" I said. He didn't answer. I could hear voices behind him, muffled, a door closing, someone whispering in another language. "I'll call you later," he said. He didn't. My mother said little during those days, but she watched me the way one watches a storm rolling closer. She'd moved back into the house for a few weeks, claiming she wanted to help me with the baby. I didn't believe her. "You're protecting me from him," I said one morning as she made tea she didn't drink. "I'm protecting you from the world that follows him," she replied. Same thing. She didn't deny it. There was a photograph on the table, a candid one I didn't remember being taken. Me standing beside him at a gala months ago, my hand resting lightly on his arm, both of us smiling in that distant, careful way people do when their secrets have witnesses. She stared at it for a long time. "He looks like he did back then," she murmured half to herself. "Back when?" She caught herself. "Nothing." I wanted to press, but something in her expression stopped me. Not fear, but regret. The kind that knows its time for confession hasn't come yet. A week later, I saw him again. Not in person, on the news. It was a brief segment, nothing explicit. A politician arrested for fraud, a shell company exposed. A fleeting image of his car in the background, the license plate half hidden by rain. To anyone else, it was nothing. To me, it was a signal. That night, I found an envelope slipped under my door. No name, just my address written in his handwriting. Inside, a single key, and a note. Trust no one. Not even her. I stared at the words until they blurred. My mother was asleep in the next room. The note felt heavier than paper. The next day, I went to see him. I shouldn't have, but worry overpowered reason. His penthouse sat high above the city, a world built on glass and shadows. The elevator opened into silence. The curtains were drawn, the air smelled faintly of smoke and rain. He was there, standing by the window, his back to me. "You shouldn't be here," he said without turning. "You left me no choice." He turned then, slowly. He looked the same, but his calm had fissures now, a man holding together an empire that was already collapsing. "You need to stay away," he said. "From what?" "From everyone." I took a step closer. "That's not an answer." He looked past me to the door, as if expecting someone. "There are people who think hurting me means hurting you." "Because of my mother?" His jaw tightened. "Because of everything." I waited for more, but he said nothing. Instead, he reached into his jacket and placed something on the table, a photograph, old and slightly faded. It was of my mother. Younger, smiling. Standing beside him. I stared at it, my throat tightening. "Why do you still have this?" "Because she taught me that love can't exist without debt," he said. "And I've been paying it ever since." The words hit harder than they should have. "Whatever happened between you two, it's over," I said quietly. He shook his head. "You think time erases blood? It stains generations." He stepped closer, his gaze steady, haunted. "Do you know what she did?" I didn't answer. "She traded me," he said, "to save her family. To save you, before you were even born." The room tilted. "That's not true." "She told them where to find me," he continued, voice low, even. "One call. One betrayal. It cost lives." I wanted to tell him he was lying, but the look in his eyes wasn't anger. It was grief. "She was pregnant," he said softly. "And she thought it would protect her. But they never meant to let her go. I found her before they could finish what they started." My heart thudded in my chest. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because the same people who wanted me gone will come for you if they think you matter to me." His hand brushed against mine, not tenderly, but like a warning, a touch that said goodbye. "Go home," he said, "and don't come back." When I didn't move, he added quieter, "Please." It was the first time he'd said that word to me. It felt like defeat. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mother sat by the window, the photograph he'd shown me now lying on the table between us. "I saw it," I said. "You and him. He told me everything." Her eyes closed. "No," she whispered. "He told you what he remembers." "What does that mean?" "It means memory is its own form of survival. We both did what we had to." I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't shake the image of him standing alone in that glass tower, a king watching his empire crack beneath him. "Did you betray him?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was so soft I almost missed it. "I chose you." The words should have comforted me. They didn't. Because choosing me had destroyed him, and now the same cracks were spreading through my life. Later, as I lay awake, I thought about the note, the key, the warning. Somewhere outside, a car engine turned over, idling just long enough to make me rise and move to the window. Nothing. Just the city breathing, lights winking through mist. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching. Not him this time. Someone else. The first piece of glass had fallen, and I knew before dawn, before another word was spoken, that the rest would follow. The city never truly sleeps, but that night it felt like it was holding its breath. The sound of traffic came and went in waves, but beneath it, there was something quieter, the feeling that someone somewhere was listening. I woke up to the sound of a phone vibrating against the wooden nightstand. The screen lit my face, ghost blue in the dark. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But silence has its own weight, and I couldn't carry it anymore. Hello. For a moment, no sound, just breathing. Then a man's voice, low and unfamiliar. He's gone. What? The line went dead before I could ask who it was. Gone. The word lingered like smoke. I called his number. Straight to voicemail. I called again. And again. By the time the sun broke through the curtains, I'd convinced myself the call was a mistake. Another rumor. Another test. Except deep down I knew. The kind of silence I'd been hearing from him lately wasn't absence. It was aftermath. My mother found me sitting at the kitchen table, still in yesterday's clothes, the phone pressed between my hands like a prayer. She didn't ask. She already knew. He'll resurface, she said, her voice too steady. He always does. Her calm unnerved me. You sound like you've seen this before. She looked away. I have. The air between us was heavy with things neither of us wanted to name. The old photograph still sat on the counter, its edges curling slightly as if even paper could no longer bear the weight of the past. I traced the outline of their faces, hers and his, younger, unbroken. How could you love someone like him? I whispered. She smiled without humor. You don't love men like that. You survive them. But you didn't survive him. You just lost differently, she finished for me. We both did. Her words settled deep, like sediment. I wanted to hate her for it, for the truth I still didn't fully understand, but I couldn't. Because I was no longer innocent in the story she began. I was continuing it. That evening, I went to his place. The penthouse was locked, the hallway empty. No guards, no movement. Only a faint trace of cologne clinging to the air, the kind that lingers long after the man is gone. I used the key from the envelope. The door opened without resistance. Inside it was clean, too clean. No papers, no photographs, no traces of the life I knew he lived here. Only one thing remained. On the desk by the window lay another envelope. My name on it. I hesitated before opening it. Inside was a photograph, this one of my mother, older, recent. And behind it, a single note written in his careful, deliberate script, ask her about the ring. I turned the picture over, and there it was, her left hand visible, a ring glinting faintly in the light. Not just any ring. His ring. My stomach twisted. He wasn't gone. He was sending me back to her, back into the center of whatever truth she'd buried. When I returned home, my mother was in the garden, pruning roses. The afternoon light caught in her hair, turning it to silver. She didn't look up when I approached. I saw him, I said. You went there. You knew I would. She exhaled, slow and weary. And I held out the photograph. She took one glance at it before lowering her shears. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. I was hoping he'd burned it, she said quietly. The ring, I pressed. Why were you wearing it? Her eyes lifted to mine, full of that same calm I now understood was defense. Because once upon a time, I was his wife. The world tilted. The air left my lungs. You what? She didn't flinch. It was before everything. Before you. I shook my head. You said he destroyed lives. He did. And I was one of them. Her voice was soft, but every word cut. I married him thinking I could fix him. I couldn't. And when I tried to leave, I learned you don't walk away from men who believe they own everything they touch. I felt sick. So when you warned me, I was warning you from myself. The garden blurred. The smell of roses turned metallic in the back of my throat. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. You lied to me my entire life. I protected you. By letting me fall into the same man's arms? Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. I didn't know, not until it was too late. I didn't think he'd find you. The ache in my chest was almost unbearable. But he did. She nodded slowly. Because I left something unfinished. And he always finishes what others start. I stepped back, dizzy. You married him. You betrayed him. And now you carry him, she whispered. The meaning hit like a slap. My hand drifted to my stomach. She reached for me, but I stepped away. He'll come for you, she said, her voice trembling. Not to hurt you. To claim what he thinks belongs to him. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that I wasn't her, that I wasn't part of his legacy. But the lie felt too thin to speak. That night, sleep wouldn't come. Every sound in the house felt amplified, the creak of the floorboards, the whisper of the wind against the window. I found myself in her room, drawn by some restless need to understand. The drawer beside her bed wasn't locked. Inside were letters, old and yellowed. Some signed with his initials. And at the bottom, a ring. The same one from the photograph. The same one he once wore when he touched my hand for the first time. My reflection caught in the mirror above the dresser. For a moment, I didn't recognize myself. Her face looked back at me. The same eyes. The same expression. The same mistake. At dawn, I went outside, the cold air biting at my skin. The city was waking, unaware that my world had quietly collapsed. Somewhere he was alive, waiting for me to do what he'd always known I would. The garden was still damp from the night rain. My mother stood there, her hands red from pruning. You were right, I said. She looked up slowly. About what? About inheritance. And before she could answer, I dropped the ring at her feet. She didn't pick it up. She just whispered, it always comes back. The sun rose over the rooftops, catching on the metal band between us, glinting once before fading into shadow. I realized then that some legacies don't end, they echo. And mine had only just begun. The morning after I dropped the ring at her feet, I left home. No goodbye, no note, just the sound of the door closing behind me, final and hollow. The city stretched before me like a test, glass, rain, distance. Every building felt like a reflection of something broken, polished, but cracked beneath the surface. I didn't have a destination. Only the need to breathe air that hadn't been shaped by her lies. But freedom, I learned, is a fragile thing. Because by evening, he found me. He waited in the same cafe where I'd once met him by accident, the one near the river where the lights shimmered across the water like molten gold. He didn't look surprised when I walked in. You shouldn't be alone, he said. I sat opposite him, my pulse steady only because I forced it to be. You have a habit of telling people what they should be. He didn't argue. I was worried. Worried. I laughed, softly, bitterly. You sent me a photograph to ruin what little I had left. His expression didn't shift. You needed the truth. That wasn't truth. That was punishment. He leaned back slightly, hands folded on the table, not aggressive but controlled. Always controlled. You think she told you everything? He asked. She told me enough. Then you know she betrayed me. She said she did it to protect me. A muscle in his jaw flickered. She says that because she needs to believe it. The low hum of the cafe filled the pause that followed. People laughed softly at other tables, unaware that the air between us carried decades of unfinished war. Finally, he said, when she left, she took something from me. Not money. Not secrets. Something worse. I hesitated. What? His eyes, steady, cold and sad all at once, met mine. A name. Yours. My breath caught. What are you saying? She was already pregnant when she left, he said quietly. She thought I'd never find out. The words hit like a blow. No. I shook my head. That's not possible. She lied to both of us. I wanted to stand, to run, to scream. But I couldn't move. The walls felt closer. The sound of the espresso machine behind the counter was a roar. You think you can come back into my life and rewrite it? I managed. He didn't flinch. I'm not rewriting anything. I'm just telling you why nothing we built could ever survive the truth. The world tilted. The chair beneath me felt unsteady, the air too thin. I thought of my mother's silence, the way she'd said, I chose you. I thought of his eyes the night he'd warned me to stay away. It all made sense now, the restraint, the guilt, the way he looked at me as if I were both hope and punishment. I don't believe you, I whispered. He didn't push. You don't have to. But you deserve to know what she took. He stood then, slow and deliberate, and placed an old envelope on the table. Inside, I could see the edge of a birth certificate, aged, creased, folded too many times. My name visible in faded ink. The space where the father's name should have been was blank. Ask her, he said. If she can look you in the eye and deny it, then I'll disappear forever. And then he walked out. I sat there long after he left, the envelope between my hands. Rain began to fall against the window, soft, insistent, as if the city itself was trying to wash away everything I'd just heard. When I finally returned home, my mother was waiting. Her eyes found the envelope instantly. You saw him again, she said. I didn't answer. I just held it out to her. Tell me the truth. Her hands trembled as she took it. She didn't open it. She didn't need to. You already know, she said quietly. My throat tightened. So it's true. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't look away. Yes. The word shattered something I didn't know was still whole. You lied to me my entire life, I said. I was trying to protect you. You keep saying that. Because it's the only truth I have left. I wanted to hate her. I wanted to scream that she'd ruined everything, that she'd cursed me before I even existed. But looking at her now, I saw what I hadn't before. She was terrified, not of him, but of herself. She reached for me, but I stepped back. You don't get to touch me, I said softly. Her voice broke. He doesn't know how to love without ownership. I couldn't let you be another piece of his empire. I laughed hollow. And now I'm carrying his child. Congratulations, Mother. You've come full circle. Her face crumpled. Please don't say that. It's true, isn't it? She nodded once, the smallest, saddest gesture I'd ever seen. Silence stretched between us until it hurt. Finally, she whispered, he doesn't know. You can still walk away. I don't think I can. Why not? Because I understood him now, the loneliness that comes from being too powerful to be human. Because no matter how much I hated it, I was tied to him by something neither of us asked for. By blood. That night, I packed a bag. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to move before he came looking for me again. Before I left, I looked once more at my mother. She stood in the doorway, small, silent, her face pale in the hallway light. "I thought I was saving you," she said. "You were saving yourself." Her lips parted as if to protest, but no words came. I turned away before she could find any. Outside, the air was cold and sharp. The rain had stopped, but the streets glistened with the residue of what had fallen. I walked until my feet ached, until the city blurred into nothing but noise and shadow. Every step felt like walking a line between two lives, the one she'd built on lies, and the one he tried to claim through truth. Somewhere behind me, I thought I heard footsteps, steady and patient. I didn't look back. Maybe it was him. Maybe it was just the past catching up. Either way, I knew there was no escaping it now. Because blood, once spilled or shared, doesn't wash away. It binds. It remembers. And it calls you home, even when home is the last place you want to be. The first thing I noticed was how quiet everything became after I left. Not peace, silence. The kind that follows a gunshot in an empty street, where even the air hesitates. I rented a small apartment on the edge of the city, a place where no one asked questions and the walls smelled faintly of rain and dust. I told myself I was free. But freedom, I learned, feels a lot like exile when you're running from two ghosts, one living, one buried in blood and memory. Every night, I caught myself waiting for the sound of his car outside. And every morning, I half expected my mother's voice on the phone, begging me to come home. Neither came. The days blurred together, work, silence, sleep that wouldn't stay. My body was changing faster than my mind could accept. Every small flutter inside me reminded me that I wasn't alone, even when I wished I were. Sometimes I'd press a hand against my stomach and whisper, "You'll be nothing like him." But part of me wondered if the bloodline would listen. One evening, a letter arrived. No address on the envelope, just my name written in the handwriting I'd tried so hard to forget. Inside was a single line. "They're coming for what's mine." No signature. None needed. My hands trembled as I read it again. And again. He was alive. Still in control. Still watching. I burned the letter over the sink, watching the edges curl into ash. But even as the flames ate the paper, the words refused to die. "They're coming for what's mine." Did he mean me? The child? My mother? Maybe all of us. A week passed before the call came. Not his. Hers. Her voice was thin, a thread stretched too far. "You need to come home." I didn't want to. Why now? "They're asking questions about him. People I don't know. They think you're the way to get to him. I told you I'm done with both of you. It's not about choice anymore." The line crackled. I could hear her breathing, unsteady. "Please, just for one night." I should have hung up. Instead, I packed a bag. When I reached the house, the garden was overgrown, the roses wilted. It smelled like the end of something. She stood by the door, older somehow, though only weeks had passed. "You shouldn't have come," she said, though she'd been the one to call. "Then why ask?" Her eyes flickered toward the street. "Because they already know where you are." "Who?" She shook her head. "The people who once owned him." The words didn't make sense until I saw the shadow move behind her. A man unfamiliar, in a dark suit, stepping out from the hallway. "Miss," he said politely, "your mother's been very cooperative." My blood went cold. I turned to her, betrayal rising like bile. "What did you do?" Her voice was small. "It's the only way to keep you safe." "By giving me to them?" "I made a deal," she said. "You'll be left alone. They just want him." The man smiled faintly. "We all just want balance." I didn't think. I ran. Out the door, down the path, into the street. My lungs burned, my heart screaming louder than the sound of my shoes on wet pavement. I didn't make it far before the black car pulled up beside me. A window rolled down. His voice. Calm. Controlled. Get in. I froze. He was there, alive, too composed for a man who should have been hiding. He stepped out of the car, his coat brushing the rain. They're watching her. They used her to find you. She betrayed me, I said, my voice shaking. She always does, he murmured. It's how she survives. He opened the car door. Now get in before they realize I'm not dead. We drove in silence. The city lights passed in blurred streaks, like memories rushing by too fast to hold on to. Finally, I said, you lied to me. About what? Everything. He didn't argue. He just watched the road, his hands steady on the wheel. There's no truth in my world. Only strategy. And I was part of it. You were the only part one didn't plan. The words hit harder than I wanted them to. After a while, he spoke again, quieter. They'll come after the baby next. My breath caught. Why? Because it means continuity. I made enemies who understand the power of legacy. I turned toward the window, my reflection faint in the glass. Then what do we do? He hesitated. We run. And my mother? She made her choice. The way he said it, final, cold, made something inside me break. She's still my mother. She was mine once too, he said softly. The silence that followed was unbearable. We stopped hours later at a house by the sea, his safe house, he said. The wind howled outside, carrying salt and cold. Inside, the space was spare, quiet. Only the sound of waves filling the distance. I sat by the fire, my hands wrapped around a cup of tea I didn't drink. He stood near the window, a dark outline against the pale dawn. Finally, I said, what happens now? He didn't turn. You rest. I take care of the rest. I don't want protection. I want truth. He faced me then, eyes darker than the night behind him. The truth is we're both products of her lies. That's not enough, I said. Tell me what you want from me. He came closer, each step slow, deliberate. The firelight caught the scar near his jaw, one I'd never noticed before. I want to end this, he said. And the only way to end it is to make sure they know the bloodline survives. You're talking about the baby. I'm talking about legacy, he said quietly. The only thing that keeps monsters like us alive. My pulse quickened. You don't get to decide who I become. He studied me for a long time. Then, softly, almost with reverence, that's where you're wrong. You already have. He turned away before I could answer. Outside, the sea crashed against the cliffs, relentless and cold, a rhythm older than all our sins. Somewhere behind that sound, I heard my mother's voice echo in memory. He destroys lives. But sitting there, watching him stand between me and the storm, I realized destruction wasn't always loud. Sometimes, it was devotion in disguise. And I didn't know anymore which terrified me more, losing him or becoming him. The house by the sea became a cage of quiet. Days folded into each other, gray and trembling, the sound of the waves against the cliffs constant, rhythmic, almost cruel. I lost track of time. He barely slept. Sometimes I'd wake in the middle of the night and find him standing by the window, watching the horizon as though expecting the ocean to deliver someone. He never said what he saw out there, and I never asked. We spoke little. There was nothing left to say that wouldn't reopen a wound. Yet silence had its own language. His pacing, my waiting, the distance that never changed no matter how close we stood. I told myself I was staying because it was safer. But safety, in his world, was only another kind of surrender. One morning, I found him on the terrace, phone pressed to his ear. His voice was low, the kind of calm that hides desperation. When he hung up, he didn't look at me right away. "They have her," he said. My throat tightened. "My mother?" He nodded once. "They took her 2 nights ago." I didn't breathe for a moment. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I needed to make sure it was true." The wind whipped through the open doors, carrying the salt inside. The air felt sharp enough to cut. "What do they want?" I asked. He met my gaze, and I saw something I'd never seen in him before: exhaustion. "They want me. They always did. And her. She made a trade. She offered herself instead of you." I shook my head. "No. That doesn't make sense. She hates you." "She hates herself," he said quietly. "That's not the same thing." He turned away, gripping the edge of the railing. "If I go after her, they'll use her to pull me out. If I don't, they'll kill her." The sea below thundered, endless and indifferent. I realized then that he wasn't asking for my permission. He was telling me what he was about to do. "You can't go," I said. "I can't not. You'll die." He looked at me then, a faint, broken smile ghosting across his face. "Maybe that's the point." He left before dawn. The silence he left behind was unbearable, heavier than the waves, thicker than the mist. Every hour stretched, unspooling slow and cruel. I waited, unable to eat, unable to rest. By evening, I couldn't stand it anymore. I found the old car keys he'd left on the counter and drove. The road wound through the cliffs, the rain coming down in thin, relentless lines. My hands shook on the steering wheel. I didn't know where I was going, only that every mile took me closer to something inevitable. When I reached the outskirts of the city, the sky was bleeding into night. I found him by instinct, not logic, a warehouse near the docks, the kind of place where sounds go to die. I parked far enough away to watch. Men moved like shadows near the entrance. Then a figure, him, stepping out of the darkness, hands raised unarmed. He was walking straight into their trap. And somewhere behind them, tied, trembling, my mother. Her eyes found me even from that distance. She shook her head, barely perceptible. "Go." But I couldn't. He spoke to them quietly. Even from afar, I could tell he was bargaining, not pleading, just calculating. Every movement measured. Then, a gun lifted. My body moved before thought. I shouted, the sound breaking through the storm. Heads turned, guns followed. In that single heartbeat of chaos, he moved, not toward them but toward me. The next moments blurred. A shot. A scream. The taste of rain and metal on my tongue. When the noise settled, he was on the ground, blood spreading beneath him like spilled ink. My mother was beside him, hands shaking, pressing down on the wound. He looked up at me, eyes unfocused, lips pale. "I told you not to come. I wasn't going to let you die for her." He almost smiled. "We never get to choose who we die for." My mother was crying, whispering his name over and over, a sound I'd never imagined coming from her. He reached for me, his hand cold, trembling. "You have to finish it," he said. "What?" "The money. The accounts. Everything tied to me. Burn it all. Make sure it dies with me." "No," I said. "You'll live." He shook his head. "Not this time." My mother looked at me then, desperate, terrified, human. "He's right. It has to end." And for the first time, I saw it clearly, her guilt, his power, my inheritance. A chain passed down, link by link, mistake by mistake. He was still breathing when the sirens echoed somewhere in the distance. He looked at me one last time. "Tell them," he hesitated then whispered, "tell them I tried to be better." Then he was still. The waves outside kept crashing, tireless, unconcerned. The rain washed the blood away faster than I could hold it. Later, the police found nothing they could use. No names. No records. Just a story that ended in fire and silence. My mother and I left the city. We didn't speak for days. When she finally did, her voice was barely a breath. "You did what I couldn't." I didn't answer. I wasn't sure what she meant, destroying him or loving him. Maybe both. I kept his ring. I don't know why. Maybe as proof that he existed. Maybe as a reminder of what obsession costs. Sometimes at night, when the wind carries the sound of the sea through the window, I hear his voice, soft, calm, still in control. We never get to choose who we die for. And though part of me wishes I could forget, another part whispers the truth I can't unlearn, that love, when born from ruin, can only end in redemption paid with blood. And his was the price we both owed. He was gone. And yet, the world didn't stop. The waves still broke against the shore, the city still pulsed with light. That was the cruelty of survival. It didn't care who it left behind. The morning after the warehouse, the sky was pale and merciless. I watched the smoke rise from the horizon, from what was left of the empire he'd spent a lifetime building. They said it was an explosion, an accident. But I knew it wasn't. He'd set it himself. A final erasure. He had told me to burn it all, but he hadn't waited to see if I could. He'd done it for me. My mother and I returned to the house by the sea. It was quieter now, emptier somehow, though nothing had changed. She moved through the rooms like a shadow, speaking little, her hands constantly busy, washing, folding, fixing things that weren't broken. I kept waiting for grief to feel like loss. Instead, it felt like static, ever present, humming beneath everything. One evening, I found her in the study. The light from the window caught her face, and for the first time, I noticed how old she'd become. "You should rest," I said. She didn't look up. "I can't sleep in a house that remembers him." "Then why stay?" "Because leaving won't erase it." Her hands were trembling, and before I could reach for her, she spoke again. "He called me that night, before he went to the docks." My chest tightened. "What did he say?" "That he forgave me." The words cracked something open inside me, not comfort but ache. She looked at me then, eyes tired. "I didn't deserve it." "Neither did he." A long silence. Then, softly, "No. But forgiveness was the only thing left to give." She turned away, and I realized she wasn't talking to me anymore. She was speaking to the memory of him, to the ghost that still lived between us. As weeks passed, I began sorting through his things, what little remained. Old files, ledgers, flash drives. Every document was a confession disguised as business. Money moved like blood, quietly, constantly, feeding something larger than either of us understood. I deleted everything, every account, every trace. With each file erased, a small part of me loosened. When it was done, I stared at the empty folder on the screen, nothing but blankness staring back. I thought I'd feel free. Instead, I felt hollow. Because endings never come clean. They leave stains in the silence. A month later, I woke to pain, sharp, sudden, undeniable. The baby was coming. The storm outside howled like a warning. The electricity flickered, and for a moment, the whole house plunged into darkness. My mother's voice came through the dark, calm, steady, trembling underneath. "It's time." Everything after that blurred into fragments, light, breath, fear. Her hands gripping mine, her voice guiding me through pain and panic. And then, a sound. Small, fragile, alive. When the doctor placed the baby in my arms, I expected tears. Relief. maybe love. Instead, I felt a strange stillness, like standing on the edge of something vast and unending. He was gone. But part of him wasn't. The proof of it was breathing softly against my chest. My mother smiled weakly. You did it. I couldn't look at her. He'll never know. Her eyes filled with tears. Maybe that's mercy. I wanted to believe her. Weeks turned into months. The house filled with softer sounds, crying, laughter, the small noises of new life. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, when I'd wake to feed the baby, I'd catch my reflection in the window, pale, tired, but alive. And then I'd see it. His eyes. Not mine. Not hers. His. It wasn't the color that frightened me, it was the calm. The same impossible stillness that once made me trust him. The first time I saw it, I froze. The baby stared back, unblinking, curious. I whispered, "You're not him." But the words felt like a prayer more than a truth. One afternoon, as I walked along the cliffs, pushing the stroller against the wind, I saw a man watching from the edge of the road. Dark coat. Stillness too deliberate. My pulse quickened. For a moment, I thought it was him, some impossible ghost refusing to stay buried. But when I blinked, the man was gone. I told myself it was just exhaustion. Imagination. Still, that night, I locked every door. My mother noticed my unease. You think he's still out there? I don't know what to think. She touched my arm gently. Some men don't die when their hearts stop. They die when they're forgotten. Don't keep him alive. I wanted to tell her it wasn't that easy. That forgetting him felt like cutting away a part of myself. But I said nothing. A few days later, the last letter came. Delivered without sender, just like the first. Inside, one sentence, in that same familiar handwriting, "Don't name him after me." No threat. No signature. Just that. I stood there for a long time, the paper trembling between my fingers. Outside, the sea roared, endless, relentless, eternal. I burned the letter, the same way I'd burned all the others. But even as the flames died, I heard his voice again, quiet, sure, inevitable, "You'll never escape me. I'm in the blood." And when the baby stirred, a small, sleepy sigh escaping him, I pressed a kiss to his forehead and whispered, "You're not him. You never will be." The words didn't sound like a promise. They sounded like a prayer. Later, I stood by the window, watching the last of the fire's glow fade into the dark. The sea stretched beneath me, black and infinite. The empire was gone. The man was gone. But the story, ours, would live inside me, written in every heartbeat, every shadow, every choice I made from here on. Because I finally understood what my mother had meant all along. Some sins don't die. They just change form. And mine had just begun to breathe. The sea had begun to calm by the time winter came. The waves still broke, but softer now, like memory rather than threat. Every morning, I'd carry my son to the edge of the cliff path and let the wind touch his face. He'd squint into the salt air and laugh, a sound so new, so untouched, it felt like forgiveness. My mother said the ocean was good for him, that it made children brave. I wasn't sure if bravery was something I wanted him to inherit. The house had changed too. She filled it with light, curtains drawn, windows open, plants that refused to die. But beneath the brightness, the past hummed faintly, like a low note we could never mute. Some nights I still woke to it, the whisper of his voice, the ghost of his footsteps in the hall. I'd lie awake, watching the moonlight move across the ceiling, and whisper to the dark, "I remember you." Not as prayer. Not as love. Just truth. My son grew fast. He had her softness, my restlessness, and his eyes, those calm, unreadable eyes. People said he looked wise for a child. I said nothing. Wisdom isn't something you wish on the young. It comes at the cost of peace. One afternoon, as he napped, I found my mother in the garden, trimming the roses she once abandoned to thorns. She hummed softly to herself, an old song I half remembered from childhood. When she saw me, she smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "You still think of him," she said. "Sometimes." "Do you hate him?" I thought for a moment. No. Hate's too easy. He loved in the only way he knew, through control. "And you?" "I loved him because I thought I could be the exception." She nodded, the shears stilling in her hand. "That's how he caught me too." For the first time, we laughed together, quietly, almost shyly. The sound didn't erase the past, but it made it easier to breathe. That evening, I went through the box of things I'd sworn I'd never open again. Inside were the remnants of an empire, burned documents, a few photographs, and the ring. It looked smaller now. Maybe because I'd finally grown out of its shadow. My son stirred in his crib, murmuring softly. I turned the ring in my hand, the metal cool against my skin. He'd told me once that legacy was all that mattered. That power was only real if someone remembered your name. But I'd learned something he never did, that true inheritance isn't in blood or wealth. It's in what we choose to break before it breaks us. I closed the box and took it outside. The night was cold, the air sharp with the scent of the sea. I lit a match, hesitated only once, and dropped it in. The flames climbed slowly, curling around the edges of everything that had chained us. When the last of the fire faded, the ring was gone, swallowed by ash and salt wind. Behind me, my mother stood in the doorway, her face illuminated by the flickering light. "You're really letting him go," she said. "Yes," I whispered. "But he'll always be here." She looked toward the horizon. Some ghosts earn their place. Weeks later, we moved inland. A smaller town, quieter streets. I started a new job, something ordinary, something mine. My mother found a small house nearby, close enough to visit, far enough to let the silence between us settle into peace. Sometimes I'd catch her watching my son play in the yard. Her eyes would soften, and I knew she saw him not as a continuation, but as a chance, the first unbroken part of our story. And for the first time, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, the past could stay buried. But legacies don't die quietly. On his 3rd birthday, a small package arrived. No return address. Inside, a single white rose and a card. "For the boy who carries my eyes. L." I stood there for a long time, the world narrowing to the small, trembling weight of that sentence. My mother found me frozen in the doorway. When she read the note, her face went pale. "It can't be," she whispered. But it was. Because men like him don't vanish. They just move into myth. I looked out at the garden, where my son was laughing under the sunlight. The same light that once fell across the table where everything began. The wind carried the faintest trace of the sea. And in that moment, I understood. He wasn't haunting us. He was watching, from a distance, from memory, from the shadows he'd taught me to survive. And maybe, that was his final act of mercy. That night, after my mother left, I sat beside my sleeping son and traced the small line of his hand. His pulse was steady, fragile, alive. I whispered, "You'll grow up knowing everything. Not the lies, not the legend, the truth." He shifted in his sleep, a quiet sigh escaping him. "You'll know who he was," I said softly. "But you'll never become him." Outside, the wind carried the sea's endless rhythm. Somewhere far away, in the dark that once ruled our lives, I felt him listening. And for the first time, I didn't feel afraid. Because love had survived. Not his kind, not the kind that devours and commands, but mine. The kind that rebuilds. The kind that ends cycles. I kissed my son's forehead and whispered the words that would one day explain everything. Legacy isn't who you come from. It's what you choose to leave behind. The moonlight caught the edge of the crib, soft and silver. The house was silent, peaceful. And somewhere beyond the waves, the past finally let go.